Welcome, one and all. Welcome to the Nagual zone. I'm Anaam. So here we are. We want to know about projections. So we'll dive straight into it. The Toltec explanation for projections is very simple and straightforward, and it's one of the best I have heard. And this is why I personally endorse it and go with it so much, especially if you can verify it. Then that really works. You can really verify that explanation. The ability to project, sorcerers understand as the ability to assemble emanations at large into a coherent moment, that you can actually live in, right? That's the sorcerer's way to look at projections. Indeed, the entire human way to assemble reality and live in it. We have an assemblage point, according to the seers of ancient Mexico. Whether it's a specific assemblage point or whether it's the luminous cocoon at large or the luminous body at large that does the assembling is irrelevant. Point is that as soon as we incarnate, we are already assembling a description, a viable and coherent description, which will become viable and coherent soon enough, in a year, max 2 years of living, when we are born. And we are in the process of assembling the emanations at large, which make no sense, into something that makes sense. And the way that we are taught to make sense of the emanations at large that make no sense is to tag them with what is called words, right? Words are a collection of sounds that indicate a cohesive item in the inventory of our assembling, right? And pretty soon we have a whole inventory of words, which are really tags to associate one coherent item in our reality, in our assembling process, and then another item and another item, so on and so forth. So you have the baby saying mama and papa and the first words in all this, and oh my God, he said his first words, how amazing, life is so beautiful. That nothing grand is happening there. Basically, a very natural process of assembling what doesn't make sense into something that starts to make sense soon enough. Animals don't have words. Only humans use words in order to make any sense of what they experience when they're alive. So you have assembling of the emanations into coherence, and then projecting that outwards as experience. Remember this one. You have assembling the emanations as large into yourself, and then projecting them out from you into your experience or life experience. So you're the center of the wheel. You're the bridge between the emanations at large and your life experience. You're the bridge. Your consciousness is the bridge. Okay? Your awareness is the bridge, as sorcerers would say. So really remember this. If you can remember this, it'll make everything so easy for you to understand. Assembling emanations at large which make no sense, tagging them with this tool that only humans use called words, and then projecting it out, which then that projection is what you experience as my life. My life. And what is my life? My life is a feeling. My life is a feeling. My life in any given moment is a feeling. It can be a good feeling or a bad feeling. Comfortable feeling, uncomfortable feeling. It's one or the other. There's very little gray areas in that very basic feeling. The baby is either crying or at rest. That's it. The baby doesn't have, because it's living on the very base projection of life experience, which is either good or bad. Either promotes survival or promotes death and destruction. Whatever promotes death and destruction in you will be uncomfortable. The baby will start crying because it's hungry. Hunger promotes death and destruction if not dealt with, or it's lacking sleep or whatever. So human children exist at very base level of feeling. It's either good or bad. Then as more words get attached to your act of assembling the emanations, you're still assembling, you will always assemble the same emanations that you are born assembling. You won't change. You won't start assembling emanations that a tree assembles, or a moth assembles, or a fish assembles. You will always only assemble emanations available to the mold of man, what is called the mold of man. This talk is turning out to be very Toltec-y, so if you're not on par with the Toltec sort of terminology, you might you might struggle a little bit, but stay with it anyway. So you will always be assembling the same set of emanations, always. It's a pretty good chunk of, for humans, you're given a lot. There's a lot of scope to, assemble a lot of amazing, magical, miraculous life experience, supernatural and powers and all sorts of things you can assemble. It's not a problem. Nature gives a good chunk to humans. It's minuscule compared to what is, but nature is generous. So here we have an untampered human who is, if imagine there was no parasite influence acting upon humans, you have an untampered human rapidly gaining an ever-increasing inventory of words in order to create more sophisticated projections, which are then called life experience. Everyone with me so far? It's already getting a bit. Yeah. Enter Mr. Parasite that starts to twist and change those projections. It starts to misalign the way we inventorize words. It starts to, create jagged edges and starts to mess with a nice, clean, neat inventory. And now you have, pretty soon, within generations, you have problems in humans, because words are, a great example of that is nowadays, I fail to understand the confusion, but apparently human beings have no idea what gender they are. I fail to totally, it's just when a Toltec warrior says, wow, I have, this is entertaining. The average man's world, insanity is truly entertaining, but I've seen it all. Along comes the more mind-boggling stuff. All I can say is, if someone comes to me and says, I'm confused about my gender, I'd say, just look south. You know where south is? Just look down. Look down. Turn your head like this and look down. Have you done that? Have you tried doing that? Try that. Take off your undies and look down. You'll not be confused about your gender any longer. But that's all I can say. I'm very practical. I don't give a fuck about what's going on in between their ears. It's none of my problem. But that's the parasite's work right there. It twists things. It misaligns inventories so that now you have a human walking around completely disregarding common sense and suffering greatly due to that. These people, no one just, there has to be suffering attached. Suffering brings confusion in order to doubt something very common sense. I have no doubt that the parasite is well able to make millions and billions doubt that they have 5 fingers on their hands. They'll start having confusions. I identify with my hand being a claw. I don't see them as nails. These are claws. And now we have forms to be filled. Do you have claws or hands now, so that people don't get offended? Right? So anything is possible. Projections have not changed. The word associations and the black magic, sorcerers call it black magic, because spelling words, it's magic. That's your magic. Humans are always born with the ability to assemble and project, assemble and project, assemble and project. Okay. Now, one of the great byproducts of such a mess up of this real dark influence that the parasite has on humans is what sorcerers call self-importance. It is born out of confusion, and confusion, even a computer will start behaving confused if its coding is disrupted, right? If computer code is disrupted, software is not going to work and that will even affect hardware. It's the same thing. Once your coding the parasite disrupts coding. It disrupts the human's ability to create clear inventories which are neat and coherent. It disrupts that ability. And there are many consequences to that disruption. You have increasing dumbness or stupidity. So the generations as they go on become more stupid than the last, all the while being convinced that they are more intelligent than the last. But that makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. And that's the brainwashing, right? Consider an average letter, just an average letter by an average clerk from 1890. Look at the English. It's amazing. The handwriting. No one can write like that now. The way they introduce themselves, the sophistication of communication, the vocabulary. That's an average clerk that's sending you a letter. You can check it out. It reads so beautifully. It reads so beautifully. But now you have, like we were discussing and joking around in my previous session with the apprentices, we have IMA. You know what IMA is? IMMA. IMA. IMA do this. And then you have Trina. TRYNA. Trina. IMA Trina do this. What the hell are you talking? What is this nonsense you're saying? It makes no sense. Then the short form of texts, SOZ. What is it? SOZ. What the hell is an SOZ? I don't understand this SOZ. This is clear. If sorcerers were computer programmers, they would see clear indication of disruption of code in such breakdown of speech patterns over generations. How can I praise someone who is beautiful as you're sick? What the fuck? What, are you healthy or sick? What are you talking about? Hey man, you're sick. That's a sick game, man. So what does that mean? Sick what? But compare that with an ordinary letter written by a school student in 1890s, and compare that with Aima, Trina, Sikh, and whatever else, that passes for speech and communication today. There's no progress going on. There's a dumbing down going on. And that is increasing levels of disruption in the human code of assembling and projection. Okay, so this is the parasite's this is the operation, the parasite's operation. When the human code software is breaking down, where it's not functioning properly like this, you have humongous self-importance as a byproduct of it. Because all the energy that system is processing, it's not able to process it cleanly and out coherently. It's not projecting. It's like going to a movie cinema where the projector isn't working very well. So you have these strange lines coming on the canvas, on the screen, or sometimes the image isn't clear, or it goes out of focus, and you're just kind of struggling. Your whole movie experience is a big struggle to understand what's going on. And that is life for humans, has been life for humans since the industrial age, and has become absolute reality since the digital. And the digital is a direct expression of the parasite. Self-importance depends on one thing and one thing alone. Without this one thing, self-importance will break down. And what is self-importance? It is all this energy that is not finding a clean, coherent projection as life experience. It's having to navigate disrupted code, and now all the energy is frittered and scattered, and the organism, the human, experiences self-importance as a way to cover that, as a way to navigate that, right? Self-importance depends on one thing and one thing alone: self-righteousness. Self-importance must be right. Think about it in your lives. Every time you've given evidence of self-importance in your life, wasn't the main overarching theme of your self-important experience was that you felt you were right? You were convinced you were right. Oh, but I am right. That's self-importance right there. And when people hear this, they will say, but I was genuinely right. Aha, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Take away a person's allegiance to being right all the time, and you break their self-importance. You break its back. Now that person is willing to be wrong. Now they'll listen. Their mind suddenly expands. They can take in new ideas. They're not so repelling anymore. Self-importance depends on you being right. And that is what we call you're projecting on me. She was totally projecting on me. What we're trying to say is that that person was convinced they were right, and no other viewpoint was acceptable. They were convinced they were right, and they were totally projecting on me. That sounds familiar to you? And we do that too. We project onto the other person, or onto the situation, or onto an experience, and we're convinced that our projection is correct. I'm right. I'm right. Forgetting that the actual criteria could have been, am I accurate? For sorcerers, we take it a step further. We say, is this useful? You see, If warriors know the pitfalls of gauging reality through the lenses of I am right. I'm right. I know I'm right. And most of all, when people are right, I heard it from, or I read it somewhere. Nowadays, it's I saw it on YouTube or Wikipedia. Basically, some version of the internet Daddy Internet has told me. So I'm right. I'm right. Yeah, I'm right. In every, every part of life experience, self-importance comes in and convinces you that you're right. And people find it very uncomfortable to admit that they are not right. Very uncomfortable, especially if they are in public. When they are threatened by the fact that others can see through them, you'll see some serious heels getting dug in and some serious self-righteousness come in. It's, no. Right? That person is projecting onto the experience, onto their moment in a way that is definitely not advantageous or useful. And it's even one step further, it's not accurate either. It's not accurate. How did I start training in this? I've said to you guys many times that I arrived, and before that, you cannot do what I'm saying before arriving at this point. Eventually, you must arrive at a point where you realize that everything you think, say, feel, behave like, everything is born out of self-importance. It is possible to see that clearly, but it doesn't come in a flash. Your awareness grows into that over time. But once you reach that threshold, there's only one course of action left to the apprentice at that point. Is then the apprentice sees, wow, I know that I'm self-important to the very core of my being. This is incredible. I'd never realized it was this pervasive. And I'm convinced I'm right all the time. Which means in order to gain some perspective and some sobriety about my life, I must assume that I'm pretty much wrong and inaccurate all the time. Warriors start working from that assumption that, hey, I'm not right in this one. I can safely assume that I'm not right in this one. Now, if you know that you may be wrong, or let's make it a little bit more, you know you may be inaccurate in your projection of your life experience, then the next step left is to gather more data, to find out more. Let's find out more, right? So I want to keep that thread right there. We'll come back to it. But I want to retrace just a little bit and tell you that's self-importance does a very strange thing as far as the mechanics of projection is concerned. Mechanics of assembling, tagging with words, and projecting out. And that is that it creates passive observers instead of active creators. A lot of this may be technical, but I know for a fact, even on anyone who will be listening on YouTube or anywhere else throughout the years, that something in you is recognizing the accuracy of what you're hearing.